theme, the Shadow Man. Shadow Men are made out of darkness. They are some of the most evil beings that I've ever seen. I fear them every day now that I've seen one, and I fear that writing about them will only cause them to seek revenge on me. They are attracted to those who are curious about them, so read this at your own risk. There are some people who attract darkness. It doesn't mean they are dark people themselves. It just means it's just the hand life has dealt them. People like us feel kinship when we first meet each other because no one else can understand what we've seen. Many times people like us were vulnerable in some way. I had parents who weren't very protective of me growing up, for example, which left me exposed to certain people I otherwise wouldn't be exposed to. A lot of us are also quite sensitive. We pick up on supernatural things that other people aren't able to. I realized how truly strange my experiences were until I decided to share one of my stories on a website, and it wound up being read and commented on many times. It's therapeutic to get those things off of my chest, but I didn't want anyone to figure out that any of it was me. I wanted to remain anonymous because stories like these are controversial, and a pen name didn't seem like it would be enough. I decided to write out my stories one by one, but add 2 fictional stories of similar themes along with each story. So that way no one can tell for sure which of these things had actually happened to me and which one of these things hadn't. Without that information, it's difficult to trace these stories back to me. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. Just know that 2 of these stories are fake and 1 is real. It's up to you to decide which is which. Feel free to share your opinions in the review section after you read it. I was lying awake in my room facing my husband's back, staring at it, hoping my insomnia would somehow be cured and I'd fall asleep. But my eyelids refused to grow heavy, no matter how long I stared, and I was quickly growing bored and restless. So I sighed in exasperation and rolled over. What I wasn't expecting to see was him. No one was supposed to be in my house except for me and my husband. He was standing in front of my closet staring down at me intently. His eyes were by his side and his feet were planted firmly on the ground. He was standing so excitedly staring at me that he looked like he almost wanted to pounce on me. He had no features on his face. He just had a 3-dimensional black figure standing in front of my white closet, which is why I could see his silhouette so clearly. You know how you think you see a man standing in your room because of the shadows that make you get scared? Well, this wasn't like that. There was no mistake what I was seeing. When you see a shadow man for real, it's not just a weird trick out of the corner of your eye. It's very clear and you're in shock. He was short, only about as tall as I am. I am less than 5'4", and he was dressed like a man in a normal pair of pants and a long sleeve shirt. I could feel his presence, and it was timed malicious. He didn't seem to want to hurt me right now, but I could feel that he could suddenly change on a whim. He was watching everything I did as if I was some kind of lab rat and he was a scientist about to dissect me. He had no eyes or mouth, so he had no facial expression, but I could see it in the way he tilted his head towards me and his body language. He was obsessed with me. Neither of us knew how to react to it at first. We were both surprised by what happened. I don't think he expected me to roll over, and I didn't expect to see a shadowy 3-dimensional figure studying me from my closet. I was panicking as I wondered whether he would pounce on me and if I had time to wake up my husband to help me. He looked on the edge of doing something, and I could feel that he was contemplating something. But instead of pouncing on me, he disappeared, which later I read is somehow shadow men are prone to do when you look them straight in the eyes. They don't like to be caught watching you. I wanted to believe he was just a vision of my sleep paralysis. I've had sleep paralysis before, where I've seen scary things that weren't there, but I was right awake this time. I hadn't been sleeping, and I haven't been moving the entire time as well. You can't keep moving during sleep paralysis. You're either falling asleep or waking up when it happens, and you're always lying on your back. I was lying on my side and rolled over to my other side. The scariest part of the whole thing to me is that he had been staring at my back for a while, just watching me. I assumed if someone stared at me like that I would be able to feel it. I would have some kind of creepy feeling or something, that I was being watched or just feel nervous. But that hadn't happened, and the way that he was standing, it had been obvious that he's been there for a while. Because I was facing my back to him, might have thought that I was asleep and that it was safe to watch me without being caught. I wondered if there were other nights where he just watches me go to sleep. From what I've read, shadow men like to watch the same people over and over again. Because of it, I struggle to fall asleep. Every single night I think of the shadow man. I wonder what he wants and if he'll ever do more than just watch me sleep if he's there. I stay up many hours at the night just wondering if I'll ever see him again, hoping that I won't. I was in my kitchen, home alone. Oh, this is story 2, by the way, my bad. This is the second story. I was in my kitchen, home alone, cooking dinner when I saw something black crawling on all floors out of the corner of my eye. It raced into the guest bedroom, which was to the right of the kitchen and separated by a gate from the living room. I thought it was my dog, who was also black, who sometimes escapes the living room and tries to find scraps on the kitchen floor or in the trash when I'm not looking, before hiding in the guest room. So I yelled at her and dropped what I was doing to chase her out of the guest room. But I saw movement from the living room. As my dog raised her head and turned in my direction in confusion, she had been sleeping this whole time. I was very confused about how she had gotten back there so quickly, without me noticing, until I realized that the gate wasn't even open and it had been her. So what was that thing? I had imagined it. Had I imagined it? After all, I had seen it out of the corner of my eye, and sometimes my eyes play tricks on me. Also, my dog wasn't barking when she sees something that scares her. She usually goes crazy. It had to be my imagination. I slowly tiptoed toward the bedroom. I don't know why I was being so quiet in my own house, but I was scared to peek inside that room. I had to though, or I couldn't go back to cooking. I had to make sure that things were safe just in case. Logically, I knew it was safe, but I had to convince my emotions too. My heart was pounding hard in my chest, but I tried to tell myself not to be scared and that I was just being a chicken. When I got to the doorway, I stared inside the bedroom. Nothing was there. I breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed. I was definitely seeing things, scaring myself for no reason. My dog started barking viciously. I jumped in surprise and whirled around. She was at the gate now, snarling in my direction, but there wasn't anything there. Maybe she heard the gardener or something. I just ignored her and I entered the room fully, just to make sure that I looked in every corner, and that when I saw him, I turned to the right and saw him standing in the corner, in a part of the room that you couldn't see until you entered it. He was black all over. He looked like a three-dimensional shadow. He was much taller than me, and his hands were raised above his head. He was frozen in place, but his posture was aggressive, like he was in the middle of charging towards someone to attack them. I stood in shock, just staring and willing him to disappear. I couldn't believe what I was seeing before my eyes. I wanted to run, but I was scared. Any movement would awaken him and cause him to charge towards me. I had a bat in the other room, knives in the kitchen I could stab him with. But can you really stab something supernatural like that? He was pure, the thick blackness, and even though I couldn't see his facial expressions, I could feel power and hatred coming from his eyes. I barely blinked when he came running towards me. His fist clenched, aiming for my head. I dodged out of the way by running to the side and back out of the bedroom door, but I knew this technique couldn't keep me safe for long. He was moving so fast, my eyes could barely keep up with him, and I knew when he ran out of the bedroom, too, I'd be at his mercy, whether he decided to kill me or not. So I fell down to my knees in the kitchen and covered my head with my hands in order to protect myself from being too badly injured. It wasn't a great plan, but I knew I was running on instinct at that point. No blows came down on me and my dog had stopped barking, so I slowly opened my eyes and covered my head, and there was no shadow creature anywhere around me. I went back to the bedroom and looked around and searched the closet. There was no shadow creature there. He must have disappeared somehow. I was terrified the rest of the day while I was home alone, but my dog kept me company and I didn't see the shadow man again. I always feel a little nervous now, walking past that room to get to the kitchen. I always feel better when we have a guest over. Story 3. It was after dark in a small town I used to live in, and I was home alone. My dog was getting antsy. She had some stomach issues, and although I'd taken her to the vet and given her medication, she was still feeling ill, and I had to take her on walks more than usual. I knew she needed to use the restroom, but I've always been afraid to go on walks at night. Although there wasn't much danger of crime in the small town that I lived in at the time, there was a lot of danger of running into wild animals like bears, cougars, and coyotes. So we went to the backyard only, and I sat and waited while she used the restroom. Also, I let her sniff around a bit because that's one of her favorite things to do. I wanted her to get any energy out before we went back to the house. As I watched my dog use the restroom, I got this weird feeling that someone was staring at me. So I looked over to the right in the woods in the direction from where this feeling was coming from, and I saw what looked like a shadowy figure standing still staring at me. I froze, hoping if I was still that he'd leave and forget he ever saw me. Yeah, it was foolish, I know, but I didn't have any weapons on me. My porch light was on and it was dark in the woods, so I thought that it might be a trick of my eyes. Even though he very clearly had shape of a man, I thought maybe my eyes weren't adjusting to the darkness of the woods and I was seeing things. That's why I kept still watching for a while, hoping what I saw would change. But then my dog started growling in that same direction. She raced towards, barking at the top of her lungs, chasing the figure until he was blocked from going further by the fence. When she got close, the shouting man seemed to disappear into the darkness completely, and I thought she had chased whatever it was off, but instead, she lowered her ears and yelped like someone had heard her. She came charging towards the glass door and that we went into the backyard from. My heart raced and my chest as panic cries came from me as well. It was not because I saw whatever mysterious thing she had just seen in the woods. It was the fact that I had never seen my dog scare like that, and I knew something really bad had happened, and I was completely terrified, not knowing what horrible thing is. My dog and I both pushed past each other to try to get into the house as fast as possible. I slammed the glass door, shut it, and locked it. I was shaking all over, and it felt like I was moving in slow motion. But I hadn't felt better after I closed the glass door. I still felt like someone was watching me, and I didn't want that man or creature or whatever it was to be staring at me. So I turned off all the lights in my house so he could see me, and also the porch light, so it would be hard for him to get in my glass door because it was pitch black out there. I grabbed my cell phone and put it in my pocket once I was done. I didn't dare look at it. I didn't want my face highlighted in the darkness so it was easy to see and find. My dog and I both sat on the couch in the living room hugging. I was practically holding my breath as I hugged her. I don't know why, but I felt like if I moved or did just the wrong thing, the shadow man would get me. It was really hard to sit on pitch blackness like that. Your imagination freaks you out with any distractions from it. I couldn't do it for very long, and I kept hearing noises coming from the backyard. It sounded like the fence in the back was cracking, which it sometimes did in the wood. The noise wasn't that unusual, but considering the circumstances, I was afraid that it wasn't actually the wind and it was the shadow guy hopping over the fence. I still had the uneasy feeling that I was being watched, so I tiptoed to the light switch I had dressed around to find it. I wanted to look at the backyard just for a second to reassure myself he was gone, and then maybe I could let the fear go. But as I grabbed the light switch and turned it on, I saw a black figure pressed against the glass door. It was a tall man, his face was pressed against the glass, his hands above his head gripping the glass as well, and his face was turned towards me like he had been watching me the entire time I was tiptoeing around in the darkness. Although maybe he was human before, but I could tell that then he wasn't. He was just blackness, pure, thick blackness, pressed against the glass. Staring at him felt like staring at concentrated evil. My dog yelped in response and raced towards my direction. I ran over there as well because I couldn't stand the shadow man staring at me, and we both hid under the covers and not locked my door. I contemplated calling the police, but I didn't know what I'd tell them. If I told them the truth, they would think I was crazy. So would my family. So instead, I texted my dad and just said, "Come home, hurry, I am scared." Without explaining it, I get scared a lot, so my dad didn't take me too seriously, and they came home after an hour after they were done seeing their movie. I was so relieved when they got home. I told them that I had seen something scary outside and even turned on the porch light to prove it to them, which was somehow now off, even though it hadn't been there earlier. But when I turned on the light, there was nothing there, and they all thought that I was crazy. The worst part, though, was that my mom lectured me the next day that I forgot to lock the glass door that night when I let the dog out, but I know I locked it. I get scared when I try to understand how the glass door got unlocked, and if that shadow man entered my house without my knowledge. Enjoying this game? Let me know which story you think is true by leaving a review with your opinion. Play again by reading the next book. You won't believe the creepy thing that happens.